And we're live. Good late evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Bigfoot Odyssey. This is the late show. I'm your host, Kerry Arnold. With me tonight, my guest, his name is Donnie Miller. He has a YouTube channel. It's called Standing Goats Rescue, but he also does Bigfoot research. So if you go check out his channel, Standing Goats Research, I'll be sure and put a link to that in the description after the show. Has had several up close, Bigfoot encounters that we're going to be talking about tonight, and getting into, something we touched on the last late show. I had Jason on here, and was the fear aspect of it, and getting people to understand what an up close face to face encounter does to somebody, and talking to Donnie, I just met you today, Donnie, and talking to you on the phone, and I could tell right away, especially telling, that first encounter that you had. This chair, it squeaks so bad, I got to get a new one. Or I sprayed Pam on it because I didn't have any WD-40, and the Pam's wearing off, so it may squeak a little. Sorry about
that. It won't stick.
Right, it won't stick. That's for sure. But we're going to try to get into some aspects of that. This won't be an extremely long show. We usually do an hour. If we go over, we do it. However long it takes is how long it takes. But I want you to just kind of talk for a little bit about that first experience that you had, or the bad one. Because there were a lot of elements in there that I had experienced before. When you talked about the thumping hitting the ground, I'd heard that for years, and I'm just thinking it's a rabbit. Because rabbit will thump the ground, but they'll do it quick, but it's never that hard. It's like you hear this thump really hard hit the ground. I didn't know what was going on. Yeah, I didn't know what was going on at the time, but a lot of the things that you said at the time really resonated with me. And you had this experience was down in Florida, right?
That's right, Marianna, Florida.
Well, I think it doesn't really, I think as long as there's a canopy somewhere in Florida, I think these creatures are around in there. So we've got a pretty decent crowd coming in. I just kind of wanted to wait a minute and get a few more in. But hey, what we will do, we'll have, I'll just give you guys a cue. We'll do a live Q&A with Donnie after a little while. But let's get into that first experience, the one that I talked to you about on the phone earlier. Just start wherever you want to, what happened that day, and let's just get into it.
All right, no problem. We worked some peanut fields, between 5 and 7 of us, to eradicate the wild hog problem that were destroying the crops. And one of the locations that we worked, it was roughly 2,400 acres. And when you pull onto it, it wasn't one large field. It was divided into 3 fields. And there was a small creek, just a foot, maybe 2 foot wide at best, and a few inches deep, that run down the center of this property lengthwise. And it had some caves just kind of scattered out. Most of them were small, but there were a few that a grown man could easily crawl into. And then the first field, when you get there, when you pull off the road, is small, somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 acres. And it had a road that cut off on the north end of that field, and it continued straight north, just the O2 Trail Road. And that one was probably close to a 1/4 mile long, and it brought you to another elongated field. And from the first field, if you headed east, there was a small 2 trail that led from that small field to the large field, which was around 1,200 acres. That road was 2 tire tracks. This is where the farmer would drive his tractor from the small field to the big field. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't a graded road. It was just 2 sand stripes going through the woods, about 100 yards long. We came in I was going to check a hog trap. I don't want to get ahead of myself. And I had a Toyota Tercel, and there was no way that car was going down that road, because the far end of it, right before you get into the big field, there was a small stream that crossed the road, and it was quite muddy. And there wasn't no way the car would have crossed it. And so I had a ex-girlfriend. We were still friends, and I asked her if she would ride up there with me so I could check the hog traps. No one else was available, and due to injuries, I was on disability, so I was off 7 days a week, and I didn't have a limit of when I could go or couldn't. And so around 10 o'clock that evening, it was in April of 2011, is when we went up to check the traps. And I had her drive the car so we could pull up across the small field to that little dim trail that went from that field to the big 1,200-acre field. And we parked right there at the entrance to that road, and she stayed in the car because the heat and the mosquitoes were quite bad out there. There's a lot of swampy areas. And she stayed and left the AC running. Well, I got out, and I had my headlamp on, a fanny pack with just the basic stuff, and a 7mm short Magnum rifle. And I started down that two-trail road, that little 100-yard road from the little field to the big one. And on my left-hand side, I was hearing footsteps in the leaves. And I stopped because I wasn't sure if I was hearing them or if it was something else moving around. But as I was crunching, there was also crunching from that left side. And I stopped, and there would be one extra step that wasn't mine. And then it would be dead silent. And I'd start walking again, and this secondary stepping would start. And I stopped, and then it would take that one extra step, and then it would stop. And this went on until I got right at the end of that little road is where that stream crosses the road, the little muddy area. And you get 1 foot right at the edge of the water, and you can literally just step over it. It's not wide, it's just kind of nasty. And as soon as I stepped over it, I heard a rumbly sound, what I thought was a mother pig. And in the wild pigs, if they have young, they'll do a long, drawn-out grunt. And it's calling the babies to order. And when mama makes that call, the babies will flood in behind her, single file, and then she'll take off and they follow. And that's what I thought it was. And it's the sides of that road are so thick, you can't walk into the mess. You can't even see into it during the daytime. And none of us have ever went in there. And if it were a pig in there, there's nothing I could do about it. I would have to wait until he'd come out in the open because of how thick it is. There's a wall of wild muscadines and just briars and the foliage, the edge of the canopy. It makes a wall on either side of that two trail.
Right.
And you can't get through it. That's all there is to it. Well, this sound was back about 20 feet from the dim trail, that dim road that I was on. It was back a little bit from me.
Now, you were on your way to the trap, right?
Yes, sir. I was headed to check the trap. And those traps have to be checked regularly. We keep water in them. We don't keep feed in them. We only set them with feed. And once the pigs get in there, as long as you have water, they can stay about 3 days before it starts getting bad, where they're dying off and they're killing one another. But it's important not to let the water run out. But this, I believe this was day 3. And so the trap had to be checked. And we got out there, and after I'd crossed that stream, I didn't hear that grunting no more. I didn't hear no more movement. And I went ahead out into the field. I wasn't 5 foot from the field once I stepped over it. Well, I went out there and I checked the trap. It was empty. So I turned to come back. And now this area, the peanuts, when during this night, they were just a little above your ankle. I'm guessing about a foot tall. They weren't real thick yet. And so I had my headlight turned to where it's hitting the ground around 6 feet in front of me because of the copperheads and the moccasins. There's so many in that area. And there's, I don't think we've ever been there to where we haven't seen them. They're abundant.
Hmm.
And I was more concerned with a snake biting me than I was a pig. And so I had the headlamp turned down to the ground right in front of me. And when I come back, I come into that little two trail. And soon as I stepped over that little stream, little water run, I heard that sound again, what I thought was a grunt. And this time I wasn't in the process of taking a step like the first time, to where my foot crunching on the leaves kind of muffled out what I heard.
Mm.
This time I planted my foot on the ground, and then it started. And it was a growl. There was no mistaking it. It was just a definitive growl, but it sounded like it was coming from inside of a barrel. It had like an echo to it, a really deep, bassy echo. And then the smell. And I remembered my brother-in-law works for the forestry department, and he deals with bears a lot. And he was explaining to me about the bears, their smell. They're really just putrid smelling, and the growling and the grunting and all the sounds the bears make. And I've never encountered a bear in my life. I've seen them on TV and I've seen them in pictures, but I've never seen one in person. And I knew there was a bear beside me, about 20 feet from me in this thicket. The longer I sat there, which wasn't but seconds, but the smell was getting hot. It was actually feeling warm in my nose. It was burning my nostril. And there's so many different elements to it. It literally smelled like a locker room. It smelled like an old hunting dog after you've run him hard, and especially in the rain. They get wet. They have that just that stinky smell the dogs get when you work them in the rain.
Dog dander smell.
Yeah, absolutely. And it smelled like urine. It had a little bit of a skunk smell. It was so many different odors just blended together, but you could pick out each odor.
Right.
And it had a rotted smell, like rotted flesh. It was awful. And I thought it was a bear. It was this, what I was hearing and what I was smelling matched with what I was told that bears are. Well, when I started to move, because this thing is, he would growl on the exhale, and when he would breathe in, it sounded like he had severe congestion. It sounded real, like he had fluid in his lungs, a gurgly sound, like he was sick. And he would exhale that deep, rumbly, it's a scary sound. It sounds like it's coming from deep within a tunnel or a cave. It's got an echo to it.
Did it sound pretty close at that point?
Yes. He was, what I was guessing, about 20 feet from the two trail road that I was on. And he was on my right side. When I came across it, it was my left side. So he was still the same area. And I think that he waited on me to get back, because I didn't hear anything as I went out in that field. But as I started moving, he started moving, the footsteps. He was following me, paralleling me. And on this two trail, there's two dirt stripes from the two sides of the tractor, the tires, where there's not hardly any leaves, there's no sticks in it, it's just dirt. And so I got on the far left-hand one to get me as far away from it as I could. And I was doing these baby steps, like you do when you're hunting and you're on a stalk. These little heel-to-toe steps to where you don't make any sound. And excuse me, he's still coming toward me. And so I picked up the pace, and my headlamp's shining down, and I'm paying attention to the ground so I don't step on a stick or anything to draw his attention. I was hoping that he didn't see me, that he didn't wind me. And I don't remember which way the wind was blowing that night. But all that was going through my head was to get to the car before this bear gets out or gets up to me. And that's when it dawned on me, he's not only is he paralleling me, but he's coming toward me at the same time. He's not staying 20 feet from me in this thicket and paralleling me. He's gradually getting closer and closer to me. Pardon me. I get a little bit of water.
Yeah, no, I can tell it's starting to affect you a little bit. So, I mean, just take your time. You know, you don't have to.
It's
no pressure here. I know. Oh, I asked you to come on here and do this, and I appreciate you doing it. But I mean, I can.
Absolutely. Well, it's important to share these things.
Absolutely.
The ending of this, I was very, very fortunate to have somebody with me that night, or I wouldn't be here now. And I firmly believe this thing would have taken me. What had happened, he was getting in, he was closing in the distance between him and I. He got probably 5 foot from the side of the road, the little two trail I was on. And I heard him come through that wall of leaves and vines. It went from the ground all the way up to the canopy, which was really tall. There's some big trees in that swampy area. And when he come through that, there was no mistake where he was. He was very close to me. And I estimated him to be around 10 feet behind me. And when he stepped out of that, I stopped. I froze in my tracks. A bear is like any other wild animal, and I don't know a lot about them. I don't know anything about them. But an animal, if you take off running, it provokes that predatory instinct that
absolutely
God designed with. That's right. And
if you can think not to run and fight the urge, it's probably best if you don't run. If you're not, if he's not bearing down on you at speed, then yeah, it's probably best not to run.
Yes, absolutely.
Hard thing to do. Very difficult thing to do.
I probably would have ran, but due to several spine injuries, physically I cannot run. I have a lot of limitations, but I can do just about anything anybody else can do. I just can't run. And I have limited movement in my neck. I can't look over my shoulder in either direction. I can't look directly up over my head. I have there was a lot of adjusting when I broke my neck. And it comes into play here in a minute. And that's the reason I'm telling you when this thing come out behind me and I froze, he would growl on his exhale, and then he would inhale just as long and deep of a breath. And it sounded almost like a growl, but it was gurgling. It was fluid in his lungs is what it sounded like. And it would just gurgle the entire breath, and then he'd growl. And I was feeling it on the back of my neck. I could smell his breath. And it reminded me of if you've ever gotten a bag of oranges and you had a couple of rotted ones in the bag and they had that fermenty smell.
Right.
When he would growl on that exhale, I would smell that. And it wasn't a good smell, but it reminded me of the fermenting oranges. It was really just an awful smell, a sickening chemical smell. I finally had turned. I got the rifle in my hands. I've got my headlamp on, and it's on the low setting, but it's shining down about 6 feet in front of me. And I've got the rifle positioned. I'm holding the forend with my left hand. My right hand is on the trigger. The safety's off. It's ready to go.
And you can see the car at this point, right? How far are you from your car?
I'm about 60 yards from the car. And I could see I had I believe it was a 98 Toyota Tercel. And around the headlights, it had a little chrome ring around both headlights. And then the front bumper was chrome, and I could see the reflection of the moonlight over that. But I could make out the shape of the car because the peanut field behind it was lit from the moonlight. You could actually see the individual rows of peanuts, but I couldn't make out much other than I could see the roof and the sides of the car and then the chrome pieces that were shining. And behind me, when I came into that road, I could see the big field. I could see almost all the way across it from the moonlight. It was lit up substantially. You wouldn't have, if it weren't for the snakes, I wouldn't have needed a light at all. It was very lit up. But that little two trail, it's got 50 and 60-foot trees on both sides of it. And it's just a wide enough path that the tractor made, the farmer that's working those fields, where he goes from that little field to the big field. He's got that one trail he uses daily. And that's where I was at, was on that trail. So it was dark inside there. I had turned, I shifted my feet. I moved my toes to my left. I can't turn my head far enough to see behind me. I have to twist at the waist. But it still wouldn't have given me enough movement to see the bear that was behind me. And so I was rotating on my heels, moving my toes, and then just slightly shifting my feet to where I could turn to see behind me. And when before I'd gotten all the way turned, there was a thudding sound that sounded like a pillowcase full of sand that somebody had just held up about head high and dropped it on the ground. It was just a thud sound. It wasn't from something running through the woods. It was just a thud. And then it happened again, and it happened several times, and I could feel it through the ground. It was shaking, and I had boots on, snake boots, which are fairly thick. And every time the thud would hit, I could feel the percussion in my feet. As I turned, I finally got to where I could see behind me, and I was expecting to see a head of a bear, somewhere between my waist and my chest. I was expecting a bear to be back there. And I've got the rifle, and as I turned, I wouldn't have had to pull it to my shoulder to shoot it. I could have leveled off on him. And I'm afraid to shoot a bear. As I was telling you earlier, I've shot pigs in the 80-pound range, very small wild pigs, with a 12 gauge, with a 3-inch Magnum slug. and they would run off, and I'd never find them. We would track them for hundreds of yards and have blood and bone and flesh, and they'd be gone. And I can't imagine a knee-high pig can survive that. What can a 300-pound bear survive? And that's what's going through my mind. And I don't want to shoot him because it's going
I'm
to.
sorry, I'm muted. I'm sitting there talking and muted the whole time. You have that rifle, that 300 short, that 7mm short mag. That's nothing to sneeze at, you know. Now, to me, that's you're gonna, especially at close range, it's just gonna pass straight through. It's gonna kill whatever's there. But that's just how I feel about it. I mean, I understand you shoot, you know, pigs with a slug. It doesn't have that same. It may knock down, but it doesn't have that penetrating power of that 7 mag. I just love the 7 mag, especially the short mag. But it's just a single shot rifle, isn't it?
No, it was a bolt action.
Bolt action. Okay, so you had 3 shots essentially.
5. It had 4 in the box and 1 in the chamber.
I'd have felt good about it.
Was some of the hogs that we took off that property, there were many of them that we didn't kill, and that was around 70-yard shots and through the boiler room, and we wouldn't find them, and we trailed them till they got back into the swamp and just never found them.
Right. I didn't mean to stop you there. I just
no, not at all.
Everybody, we're anticipating this thing that's about to happen to you, and I'm stopping you, and everybody's cussing me right now. So I'm not looking at the chat, so I don't know. I looked over here a minute ago. You're getting a lot of support here. Just letting you know, you're getting a ton of support here, and this is very important. So I'm going to shut up. I'm not going to say another word. I'm going to let you finish this. Let's recap. You're 60 yards from the car. You see there's enough moonlight out. You can see, but you're in this dark corridor, obviously, with the trees and the canopy over you. So, and you're there, and you're got this bear essentially behind you. You got these strange odors going on. So you're about to turn around and face this thing. So here we go.
Yes, and the thumping had started. That ground shaking thumping, and it never crossed my mind that something would be running up on me or running away from me. This thud that was happening, it didn't change in tone. It was consistent and in the same spot, and I had nothing in my mind to answer for what I was hearing. I couldn't put anything together. As I got turned, the first thing that hit me was I couldn't see the peanut field. And this thing was lit up just 20 minutes earlier than where I was at this time. 20 minutes earlier, I could see the entire field through the whole length of that dim road, and I can't see it at all now. And I couldn't understand I didn't know if I was blacking out. I didn't have an answer for what I was not seeing. Basically, everything was black, and I tipped my head back. I can't lift my head straight up like I should be able to normally because of the neck injury. I lost a vertebrae and have a lot of hardware in my neck, so I have a lot of limitations. And I've adjusted. I live just as normal as anybody, but I have to do a lot of things different. And I had to sort of lean back to get my head lifted because the headlamp's still shining down towards hitting roughly 6 feet in front of my boots, so I wouldn't get snake bit by stepping on one going out across them fields. Well, as I leaned back a little, I could see hair, and it wasn't registering with my mind that I was looking at hair or fur. I don't know what I was looking at. I didn't put 2 and 2 together. I'm seeing black, but I'm seeing hair, black hair in this darkness, like a shadow with hair is what I was looking at. My depth perception was really messed up. And I knew this bear was around 8 to 10 feet from me because I heard him when he stepped out. And he growled again. And that's when I realized the growl was coming from over my head, not, down at my waist or chest. It was coming from high up. And I leaned back and tipped my head as far as I could to try to see where the sound was coming. And that's when the headlamp, I had him lit up on his left side, right around his shoulder and chest, right there at the base of his neck. But it was more on that left shoulder. And there was a man standing there. And I lost it. I was expecting to see a bear, and there's a man standing in front of me. He had his hands, his arms were against his side. His elbows looked to be touching his sides. And he had his hands balled up in a fist, both of them. And they were pointing toward me. And I was turned in a way to where I could fire on this bear if I needed to. Without me extending my arm, I could have let go of the forend of my rifle, and I could have reached just a couple of inches, and I could have touched his fist. From my foot to the end of his toes was around 3 foot. He was right there on top of me. And I thought he was at somewhere around 8 to 10 foot is where I initially thought by hearing when he stepped out.
Right.
But one more step, he would have literally stepped on my heel. He was right there on top of me. And as I leaned back, he would growl, but he didn't have his teeth clenched like you see a dog or any other animal or predators that growl. His mouth was partially opened. He would have it wasn't completely closed. You could see the gap between his teeth, but he would open it a little bit when he growled, when he made that sound. And I seen that he had teeth like I do, or like normal people. I'm missing most of mine, but he had the just like the squared teeth. His teeth were like a person's. It wasn't a canine teeth. They looked like a human.
Mm.
But I was looking at a caveman. And as he growled, he took his fists and he would, I don't know if you can see me. I'll try to sit up. He had his fist pointing at me. He would throw him down to the ground and he would stomp his foot. And that was that thud that I kept hearing. And he kept doing that. He was growling. He'd sling them fists down and stomp his foot. The whole ground would shake. I got so frightened. I turned back toward the car. My heart, I don't know if any of y'all have ever experienced this. This was the first time I've ever had this happen. My heart was beating so hard that I could hear it. I could hear it like I was listening to somebody else's chest. It was literally pounding in my ears, and my eyes started getting really hot. I thought I was fixing to black out. And I could see the car. I could make out the outline. I could see the moonlight shining on the front of it. And I knew there wasn't no way I'd be able to get to the car. If he would have extended his arm out just a little bit, he could have grabbed a hold of my shoulder without stepping forward at all. I was by no means was I out of his reach. I was right there on him. And finally, the only thing I knew to do was my headlamp. I had one of I believe it was a Coleman from Walmart. And it had the modes on it. Each time you click the button, it would go from high, medium, low, then a red light and a green light or a blue light. I don't recall now. And then it would go off. And each click of the button, you would have to cycle through it. If you were on low and wanted to go to medium, you'd have to cycle through all of them to get back. There wasn't no, just one click and you'd be where you wanted to be. You have to cycle through them. And I aimed the headlight toward the car and I started just clicking that button as fast as I could and just going through all the light modes. And finally, my friend who was in the car, she turned the headlights on. And then the high beams went on. And then I heard her yelling. And the car was running. It was idling with the air conditioner going. And she had the windows up. And at that distance, I could hear her over the yelling at me and using the F word. She just kept saying, F and run, F and run. And when she started blowing the horn, that's when this thing took off. And he came out of the woods from my right side. And when she started blowing the horn, he took off and he went in on my left. Like he continued the way he was going. But when I got to the car, I just jumped in the front seat, rifle and everything. I didn't take anything off. And she was just going on, just blabbing worse than I was. And I said, did you see that bear? And she cut me off because I was trying to convince myself my headlamp lit him up in a way that made his face flat, made him look like a caveman. I was just trying to figure out how to make what I've seen to where it would resemble a bear. And there was no way, but she said that wasn't no effing bear. And I said, what'd you see? And she said, that was a man. And she said he had his fist balled up, and she described what I just witnessed. And I didn't even have the opportunity to tell her, but she said he was slinging them fists to the ground and stomping his feet at you. And she said, I could see his mouth opening. I don't know what he was saying. I could see his mouth opening. He was growling. He wasn't talking, but it looked like the pictures that I seen in middle school and high school in history of during the period of the Neanderthal and the caveman, the caveman drawings.
Yeah,
But
like I was telling you earlier, Mark Zasky gets pictures of ones just like that. There's not a lot of hair on the face. It's just the heavy brow, deep sunken eyes. Like it kind of looks like a black guy, sort of the larger nasal passages and a really wider mouth. And how tall was he? Was he extremely tall?
He was big. I'm not real good at estimating what the height was. I'm 5'9", and she said from the car she was in the driver's seat about 60 yards in front of me, and she said that from where she was standing, she could see the upper part of his stomach and his entire chest over the top of my head. And that's with me wearing snake boots, and then I got my ball cap and headlamp on.
So it's an 8-9 footer.
I would guess somewhere around that. I know when I looked up at him, the reason I didn't see him at first is there's nothing out there that big that I would have to look up to see. Right. And my mind, I know there's something in the dark right here in front of me, and I can't see it, but I can't see the two stripes in the two trail, and most of it's sand. It's two white strips that running through that right. thicket, and I couldn't even see that. I couldn't see the peanut, and I was lost mentally. Why am I not seeing that? because if I could see the two stripes, I could get an idea of where this thing was, exactly where he's at from me and his height, but everything was blacked out.
He was just
Because,
so close that when you turned
yeah,
around, that was everything was blacked out. I mean, uh, I can picture this. You know, I've had an experience with one of these, and it was bad. You know, the whole thing was bad. The after effects of it were bad. They're still bad 13 years later. Now, this happened
oh
to you
yeah,
in 2011. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about the effects because I can relate to you on those and what how you felt after the things you went through. Did you go back in the woods after that?
it was a while, a few years. I will not go in the woods at dark. Um, I've hunted my entire life, and I would get in the woods normally if I'm deer hunting between 4 and 4:30 in the morning, and I would get to wherever I was hunting, and I would wait for first light, for first movement, because as you know, um, and there's many that don't hunt that don't know this, but that hour before sunup, the dew is falling, the humidity and the dew, they're falling to the ground, and with it, they carry your odor, and you become invisible. And if you're there an hour, hour and a half before first light, you may have a buck walk 3 or 4 feet in front of you. And as long as you don't move, he'll never see you. And your hunting success is through the roof by getting out there at those times and remaining motionless. And I will not go into the woods when it's dark. I will not be out there. And when I finally, it was 2014 or 2013, I don't recall. I started hunting again, but I would get there so late in the morning, and I'd leave before that good movement in the afternoon. And
Mhm.
I went from killing just my normal year was between 8 and 10, sometimes 8 and 12 deer,
Not like me.
and 20-25 pigs, and then it went to I'd be lucky to get 2 deer the entire season, and maybe 6 or 7 pigs, and
Well,
it
what about
yeah,
answer this? Answer this. What about after this? Once you just finally decided you're going to go back to deer hunt, you had to be thinking this thing is still out here somewhere. He could
yeah.
be right there watching me the whole time. You know, that's part of the main reason I never went back. Aside from making some promises to the good Lord that I'd never kill another animal if you get me out of here. On the way out was, what am I going to do? How am I going to be able to do this and go back knowing? Because there's no
You
two
know,
ways about it. You're 100%
yeah.
sure this thing could be right there. And with what happened to you, you believe he wanted to hurt you.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I there was no question. If she wouldn't have been in the car, I think he would have pulled me apart. And the size of him, his hands, they were right there. They were so close to me. It's to see a hand that large, and it looked like a big man's hand, but it was so much larger. And to see the fingers, the 5 fingers on it, the thumb, and the fingernails, they looked like they were bruised. The nails were really dark, like underneath them,
Hmm.
but you could see the creases in his knuckles. And you could see him move and the opening and closing of the wrinkles on them. And to know that it was real, and to see a finger that looked almost the size of a soda can, it was so hard to fathom. And you realize just how puny you are. And that shooting him was not an option. And if I were to go through that same thing again, and if the good Lord would tell me, you're fixing to be face to face with this creature, which firearm do you want? I'll give it to you. I wouldn't choose any of them. I don't think it would have done me any good. I don't I don't think it would have done much more than angered him. But that's
You'd have
it's
to be really
hard.
good and shoot him in the head somehow. And, I think even then it's not a guarantee. But you
His
got a 7
the way
millimeter
it,
Magnum, even a short mag, you shoot something in the head, he's probably going down. But I understand how you feel. I get it. When I saw the one that I saw, I had turkey shot and I had the plug in it. So I got 3 shots, high brass number 4, which is nothing to really sneeze at, at close range. I felt
no,
like, of course, the one I saw wasn't, he was probably 6'9", 6'10", close to 7 foot, 400-500 pounds, massive, still really thick, long arms, huge forearm, small bicep, ugly. I thought it was a black guy coming through the woods, when I first saw it. I was really
oh, yeah.
upset at this guy. Well, I'm 80 feet away at the farthest, and he's just standing in a gap complaining at me about something that I'm doing. And I'm just freaked out completely because this is not supposed to be happening. I knew what Sasquatch was. I knew what Bigfoot was. I'd seen In Search Of and all these things growing up. I just never believed that if they were real, I'm not sure how I felt about it. I was so indifferent. I knew they weren't. I knew they weren't in South Mississippi. I knew that much. If it existed, it's a Pacific Northwest problem, probably like most people believe. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if it was a whole bunch of hooey, So I believe that's probably how I felt about it at the time until you see it. And then you think, well, wow, people see these things all the time. Nobody ever lives to tell about it, That's how I felt being, 800 yards away from my four-wheeler. But getting away from my experience, I'm just trying to get a little corollary here.
Oh, yeah,
Back to what happened to you. But you have actually had several other experiences after this, right?
Oh,
you want to talk about a couple of those? What we got?
Oh, yeah.
I don't even know what time is it. We got. We'll go. We'll go as long as you want to go. We'll go.
Oh, yeah. I'm good. I'll tell you. I had a very interesting encounter, and this was, I think it was last year, the hunting season 2018, 2019. I want to say January or February of last year. I don't recall the actual month. But the area where I hunt, I do not use high power rifle. The only reason I used them back in 2011 is because of that field. Some of them shots were over 600 yards. And the muzzle loader ain't going to do it.
Right. No, but 7 mags, good flat shooting gun.
Oh, yeah. But given the choice, I'll take a muzzle loader. And that's all I hunt with now is that and my crossbow. And this area where I hunt is primitive weapons only. And there's only a handful of us that hunt it. Well, there's 2 logging roads. You're not allowed to drive in there, but you can park at the gate and you can walk the old logging roads to get to wherever you want to go. And one of them, if I parked at that one, it would put me about 225 yards to the area that I was going to set I have a Millennium tree seat. You actually strap it to the tree right there at ground level or, sitting height, and you unfold it and you sit in it. And it's the most comfortable chair I've ever had, but it only weighs 4 pounds. And so I can walk quite a ways carrying that, and it doesn't hurt my back or my legs. And so I opted to park at the second road, which when you park from the vehicle, I have about 70 yards. I walk straight north, and then I take a hard left, 90-degree left-hand turn, and it's 830 something yards. I'd have to walk that direction, and then turn right in about 150 yards through the planted pines, and I would come to another road where I would set my chair up.
A little over half a mile walk.
Oh, yeah, easy. but it's a good, it's an easy walk. It's a wide open logging road, planted
Yeah.
pines on both sides. But once I got down there, down that long 800 plus yard road, I turned right. I went across the pine block, and there's another logging road that parallels that first one I walked in on. Well, I set my chair about 20 feet off of that road, but facing it. And the reason doing that, that puts me where I'm facing due north, and that logging road runs east and west right there in front of me, 20 feet in front of me. And just on the other side of it, we call it the horseshoe. It's a logging road that heads straight north about 250 yards, and then it curves back to the right, back toward the east, and it circles right back, and it connects back into the same road that it starts. It's shaped like a horseshoe. Well, I would sit right there at that junction, so I'm looking down the main logging road I'm sitting on, and then the horseshoe road. It gives me 3 open lanes, shooting lanes. Well, I got there early, and I was going to hunt until the sun got back behind the trees, and then I would head to the truck, and I would get to the truck just before it got dark. And I'd got there, I'm thinking it was around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I had a little ways before prime movement of the deer started. And so I said, well, I'm going to do a stalk around the horseshoe road. And I would take 3 baby steps, and I would stop, and then I'd scan my right side, and then scan back to my left side. And then I would take 3 steps, stop, scan right, and I would keep doing that. Well, after about an hour, I made it to the curve in the horseshoe where it turned back and headed back south again. And I stopped and scanned to the right. And what I'm looking for is horizontal lines, because everything in nature grows vertically. It reaches for the heavens. And when you see a horizontal line, that's normally the back of a deer, a pig, or it's a fallen tree. And so I'm looking for them lines, looking for a brown deer out in a brown environment. You'll never find him. You have to
Yeah.
look.
Well, if they're not moving, you're not going to see them.
That's right. You have to look for them lines. And that's what I was doing. I'd stopped, and I scanned to the right. And as I was coming back to start scanning to the left, it dawned on me, I just saw a big hairy black thing, and it looked as though he was standing behind one of these big mature pine trees, and he stepped out. I didn't see him step out, but what I saw was him standing there, and his as I'm looking at him, his right leg about knee down and his right arm about elbow to his hand was behind the tree. I couldn't see that, but I could see his right thigh, his crotch. I mean, I could see everything. I seen a male figure, hair colored, or hair covered, typical Sasquatch picture. And it didn't register until I was looking back to my left side, and I stopped, and this is just seconds. When it dawned on me, I just seen one. And I looked back, and there's nothing there. And I remember seeing the big pine tree, and there's a big vine that's about a foot away. It goes straight up. It's growing really close to the tree, and then it wraps up in the limbs way up at the top. I've seen the vine there, and I've seen that tree, but there was no big black hairy thing there. And as I'm looking for him, I'm thinking in my mind, I'm remembering a picture or something I saw on the internet. Um, maybe I'm thinking that I saw something. My mind's playing a trick on me. And down on the left side, it goes down to a swamp down there. And I hear these really loud uh, bang. It was three really loud bangs, like somebody had taken one of these big trees that fell over, and they skinned all the bark off of it and took a wooden bat or a wooden board, a heavy board, and just cracked it on that hard spot where no bark would be. It was wood. It was wood on wood, and extremely loud. It was three of them, and that sounded to be about 100 yards from me. But there's no houses down there. There's nobody down there, and there's nothing down in the woods that makes those sounds. Not a woodpecker ain't possible. It just can't happen unless
Right.
he's 15 foot tall. But it was just, it echoed. It was so loud it echoed through the swamp. And I look back over, and now all this is running through my mind. I think that's one banging on something on my left, and I think I just saw one on my right. And what do? Do I continue down the horseshoe because I'm right at the halfway point, or do I go back the way I came? And I just turned around and I went back the way I came, and it was quiet. Um, I get all the way back to my chair. When I get to the end of the horseshoe road, it dead ends into that logging road. Well, I just walked straight across the logging road, and 20 feet in the bushes, there my chair is. And I get up to it, and I turn, I sit in my chair, and I hear coming from behind me and a little to my left side, the cooing sound that a dove makes, like the morning dove. Are you familiar with that coo?
That
Yes.
it's got a little trill to it.
Yeah, that's what I heard, but it rattled my eardrum. It was so loud, it made my ear like it sounded like a blown speaker. That's the way I was perceiving it in my left ear. I've got a bad ear, but I was hearing it like a blown speaker. It was so loud, it hurt. It was so. I don't know if it was the pitch. It sounded like a dove, but it just extremely loud, and it did that. I think two or three times. It wasn't much, but it was so incredibly loud, and I could feel it in my chest. I could feel it in my arms, and I had it. I flipped, and well, immediately I got out of the chair and I spun around because it was coming from behind me, and I couldn't turn my head to see, but I could sit in uh, about the height of a normal chair is where I had my seat fixed.
Mm.
And it sounded that it was about the same level as where I was sitting from behind me. And I turned around, I couldn't see anything. There's a lot of undergrowth, but there was nothing to be seen. And I got so scared. I unhooked my chair, I threw it over my shoulder, and I took off. I ain't sticking around. I got about 45 minutes before prime deer movement, and I am not risking it. Well, the sound where I heard this thing coming from, I've got to head due south to get to the logging road that takes me back to the truck. The sound came from the southeast, but maybe around 60 yards from me. I'm sorry, don't want the puppies that fell. But I would have to go past this thing to get out. And that was horrifying. There wasn't nowhere else to go, and I had to get to that road. It's going to be dark soon, in about 45 minutes. I was trying to move slow to where whatever it was wouldn't take notice of me. I got to turn to where I can see while this puppy's fussing.
Yeah, Donnie has got
Yeah.
a dog with how many brand new? 8 brand new puppies.
7.
7 brand new puppies back there. So it's probably we can barely hear it. It's not a big deal, really.
Well, he's stuck. I found him. We got a little barricade we had to set up because she has him on the couch, and Mama was abused. And when we move him, she panics and she's right back on the couch. So we just let her have the couch for now. I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. So you've got your chair. You're getting back out, and you're how far from the logging road? Now the logging road it's a half mile from the logging road to the truck, correct?
Yes. Once I get through this block of planted pines, mature planted pines, I've got where my chair was. I've got about 150 yards. I got to walk through these planted pines to get to that logging road, and then and that's headed due south on the money. And when I get to that road, I turn left and I head east about 830 something yards. Well, when I started heading toward the logging road through them planted pines, whatever made that cooing sound, he's beside me, around probably 70 yards, 80 yards, not real close, but not far either.
Mm-hmm.
And it breaks off running. And like he was, as I'm headed south trying to get to that road, it sounded like he was at my exact position to my right side. He was even with me. And he just tears off running toward the logging road that I'm headed to. And what made it so weird, do you remember back when you were a child or a young boy, you and your friends would play cowboys and Indians, and whoever was the Indian, they done that, that sound you do with your hand. That was the sound this thing was making. And it was just incredibly loud, but he would do that Indian chant or whatever you call that. But he would run really fast for about 50 yards doing that. And then he just stopped and it was dead silent. And I had to walk the same way that he's running. That's the only way to get out. And he's on my right side. Well, I'm headed south trying to get to that logging road. And he'll wait until I get even with him where he's at. And he burst in another run again, doing the same thing. And just sound like he was snapping 1.5-inch diameter logs, sticks, the deadfall, just crunching everything. But the speed, breaking of the sticks wasn't a big deal, but how fast the individual footsteps were hitting the ground was scary. It was, there's no way a human can move that fast. But I did not see him. But I would hear him. You'd hear the thumping of the steps. You could, I don't know if I felt him, but it almost seemed like you could feel the thumping.
Right.
If you ever been in a mobile house, a mobile trailer, and the kids are outside, if they run past it, you could hear the thumping through the ground. That's what it sounded like. But every step, there were all the twigs and the limbs that are under the pine straw would just shatter like there was an insane amount of weight on it. Well, I guess he made it to the road and he stopped. And then when I called up to him and got on the road, there's nothing there. I can't see him at all. I didn't see him. I turned left and I'm headed back to the truck. And he didn't cross that road. He stayed in that block of pines. Well, then he comes flying past me on my left side and doing that Indian call, that whatever that sound is, and he would fly past him about 50 yards, and he'd stop, and it'd be dead quiet. And he was close, and the sun's going down. It's back behind the treetops. So under the pines where I was at, on both sides of the road, was dark. You can't see into them.
Hmm.
But on the logging road, you didn't need a flashlight. I could see all the way down it because the ambient light was still there. But under the trees were dark. And he would wait until I caught up to his position on the road, and he would break off into that run again, like running the direction I was going and doing that crazy Indian call, that woo, 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 all the way until he stopped. And the burst of speed and the distances that he was running, it's only 50 yards, but he's done it 6 or 7 times now. And when I would catch up to him, it sounded like he was about 20 yards from me at most, but I couldn't hear him breathing. And he should have been panting, out of breath, or there's no way a person could have done that, run like that, especially through that pine straw bedding and all them limbs. And it's hard walking through it. And this
Sure.
thing was running through it.
Now, while all this is going on, are you thinking back to 2011?
Yeah.
You know, are you aware that this is probably one of these creatures out here?
Absolutely. And it gets pretty strange. I kept thinking about the one that I thought I saw, and now I'm thinking I did see him, but did I? You know, I'm questioning myself, and then I'm listening to this thing run past me, and it's scary. I called my wife, and my wife's name's Kim, and I said, "Baby, I've got one of them things up here again messing with me." And I told her what it was doing. I said, "You know, if I don't make it home, you know where I'm at," because I hunt the same area. I know that area well, and we got all the different roads and trails in there. They're all named. I've been hunting that since I was 16 years old, and I'm 51 or 52. I don't remember now, but I've been hunting it for a long time. And my wife, before we adopted our granddaughter, she would hunt with me too. So she knows the area. And I told her where I'm at. And I said, I'm going to the truck, but this thing's running past me. He's making these crazy Indian sounds. And I think she had heard it. She's in bed now. I can't ask her, but I think she had heard it, if I remember correctly. I was telling her because I was scared. And I told her, you know, this thing's scaring the crap out of me. He's running past me doing this hollering. And I've got a 50 caliber muzzle loader in my arms. And with that one, I am very confident in shot placement. I know the trajectory. I know the ballistics of that round. I know all the details I need to know on it. But that element of fear, when you get scared, you start shaking, all of that's out the door. And I told her, I'm scared. I'm so scared. If I don't make it home, you know where I'm at. And I ended up, he didn't hurt me, but he followed me until I got to the point that I had to turn right, and my truck was right there, 70 yards from me. And he never came out of that block of woods. He should have come out on that road where I would have seen him, but he didn't. The only one I saw, or I think I saw, is when I was walking down the horseshoe stalking. And it ended up, I thought he was around 6.5 foot, maybe 7 foot is what I guess. I bought a boat motor. I've got to jump ahead because this all relates to this encounter. I bought a boat motor from a fella that retired from the Navy. And his wife does hand carvings out of, she takes chunks of wood and she carves the most incredible things I've ever seen in my life. and he was showing me all these beautiful things this lady's carved. And one is sitting on the table, and it looks like a caveman. And my heart started racing, and I said, well, what's that one? And I pointed at it. And he says, a guy wanted that made. That's a Sasquatch. And I said, oh, my Lord. And so it got me to kind of testing the waters. And I said, well, what do you think about him? And he said, well, a lot of people are credible, and I believe they've seen something. And he said, I've never seen it. And he says, have you? And I didn't want to lie to him, but I didn't want to tell him. And so I finally said, yeah, I have. And he said, you know, I have a friend that knows a guy that travels the world. He almost died. And by a miracle and the grace of the Lord, he was saved. He was healed, a miraculous healing. And so now he travels the world. I don't know if he's trying to save the Sasquatch or what he's doing with him, but he goes to help people that's had encounters. Well, this man set me up to meet this fellow, and he called me, and he said, would you go up there with me? I told him about the bad encounter in Mariana and the one I had at this area I was hunting. And I said, well, it depends on where you want to go. And he said, I want to go to Mariana. And I told him, I said, no, I will not. And he said, what if I can make it worth your time? And I told him, I said, you know, not to be mean to you, but Donald Trump and Bill Gates combined cannot come up with an imaginary number that I would accept to go back out there. It's not going to happen. And there's nothing in the world worth facing one of them things like that. And he said, well, what about the encounter in this other area? And I told him, I said, well, that was recent. I said, yeah, I'll go up there with you. I don't feel in danger there. And a lot of my videos on my channel, I've been recording there. I still go out there. And I'm
since
scared.
Since you mentioned that, before we go on, there's 272 people here now. And, you know, when we mentioned it before, there weren't that many. Just let everybody know that you have started a YouTube channel. You do hikes and you show evidence in this area down in Florida. And it's called, actually, I made a banner for it. Let me put it up here.
Yeah.
Standing Goats Rescue. So that's just anybody watching this after the live. Go and subscribe to Standing Goats Rescue. Check out his videos and stuff that he's put out. You've actually it started out as this Standing Goats Rescue, and you just kind of started adding the Bigfoot investigations to that, correct?
That's right. And
okay.
I actually, I had a pretty crazy event happen today at the property.
Awesome. Well, then I'll watch it after this. We're not going to stay too much longer. I just want to let everybody know that real quick, and we'll finish this one up, and we're definitely going to have you back on, though.
Oh, so. Absolutely. I actually love your company, and it's helpful to talk to someone who's also had an encounter. The repercussions from running into one of these things is life altering.
It is.
It ruined my life. And it has taken so much away from me. And I don't think I'll ever get it back. But these last few years have been so critical. And I go out in the woods alone now. I don't go at night, but I do go to just a couple of areas that I'm familiar with. And one of the main areas where I have a lot of encounters, I get a lot of whistling. And it's where this encounter I'm telling you about with the Indian sound and that loud dove sound and seeing them. I've seen some bizarre stuff there, but I never had that feeling that I was in danger, but it still scares me bad, horribly bad. I'm petrified of these things. And
no, I absolutely know the feeling. And I felt exactly the same way you did until we started doing Bigfoot Odyssey just a little over 2 years ago. And
It's a huge help.
well, as far as ruining your life, I think that's a decision. I think I was letting it destroy
Oh
a,
yeah,
a lot. It just
yes,
turns you into a completely different person. If you don't become somebody else, then you're just going to lose your mind dealing with this. I still looked into it. Just you're looking for that validation. Listening to the stories, and thank God for Wes Germer and the podcast. That
absolutely.
that helped me more than anything. But when we started doing this and talking to more people and doing something with it, and I think it's a good thing that you're doing with your channel. You're actually, and I think you'll get a lot more people now, especially the ones that watch this, to come and support you and what you're doing. Look at the evidence and just what you think, because we don't know anything about these creatures. A lot of
No,
the things you hear and a lot of the way people feel about these creatures, and they're benevolent, they don't want to hurt you. That's BS, man.
that
That's
is
not true. They will, if you do something, whatever it is, don't know what you've done to cross the line, but there is a line with some of these creatures that they
yeah.
want to hurt you. And
One
because
of
I
the things.
experienced that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you are so so much in line with the way I feel on it. And one of the things that is I've been weighing on it pretty hard these last few months. And today I spoke to someone because I had some I really got freaked out and had to leave our property today. Not where we live, but we have a small piece of property north of us, and some stuff happened. I had something take off running in front of me. I'm not running, but the the loud crashing footsteps. It was so close, and then one from behind me, and I lost it. I panicked, and I got out of there, and I came home, and I just uploaded it. But it got me to thinking, and I was talking to a fella, and I said, the all these events, and I'm always wondering why. Are they following me? I'm having issues almost any time I go in the woods, no matter where I go. And I hear so many different excuses. One, my biological father is Native American. I was adopted. My native side is heavy. And I love everything about Mother Earth, the wildlife. Every animal that I harvest when I hunt, I lay hands over that animal and I pray over it. I give thanks to that animal. I thank the Lord for blessing us with him. And it's a thing that I have a love for life, for all life. And it dawned on me the minute we leave our vehicles, we leave the road, we leave man's mark, wherever it is we're at, when we step beyond that first tree into that forest, we've just walked through the doorway to their living room, their home.
Mhm.
And you can't move out there without them knowing that you're there. Just like in your house, if somebody comes through your side door or back door in the middle of the night, there's nowhere he can go in there and hide from you. You know you're home. You know when there's a presence there from somebody being in there. And these things are so in tune with their surroundings, and we're coming into their home. And I wish we knew what they were. The Bigfoot thing, it throws me off. And I didn't argue with Wes, but when we was talking about that, my bat encounter, I said, Wes, this thing didn't have big feet. I mean, it did, but for his body size, that they were right. I mean, he was not out of proportion, other than his eyes were really big. They were too big for his face.
Hmm.
He had these. I remember the pupils in his eye. You could see the lighter color just on the outside edge, but it was almost all pupil. The eye was. It was so big and just it was creepy. And everyone I've seen after that, even the ones at a distance, the ones out there at 100 yards or 110 yards, as long as they don't turn and look at me, no, it still scares me. Don't get me wrong. They all scare me. But if I see one and I'm watching him for a minute or a minute and a half, which is a long time when one of these things come in, and if he doesn't look at me, I'm scared, but I know that I should not move. I should be very still, be very quiet. But the minute he turns, and they always find me, when they turn and look at me, it's like they know I've been there the whole time. And when they face you, you know, you get this feeling that overcomes you. You've been busted, you've been made out. And it is such a horrible feeling that I get when they look at me. It scares me to the point of one of these days I'm going to have a heart attack. And I believe I'll die before they have the opportunity to kill me. They scare me that bad. And I wish they didn't.
No, I get it. I don't know. I don't know how you go out there, period. You know, I myself have trouble with it. And hey, shout out to Chris Benkini, $50 super chat. Thank you, Chris. That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Hallelujah.
I want to thank everybody that's donated to us. Let's see. I say everybody. I'm gonna do a shout out right quick. Lindsay Bay and David Johnson and Jerry Ham and now Chris Benkini. Super chats is fine. YouTube just takes 30% of that for themselves, but we appreciate those of you that donate to the PayPal. It's very much appreciated and much needed. Not asking for anything, just thank y'all for doing what you do. I want to say this before we get out of here. You know, I have a little bit of a theory about, you know, you do go out there and you say you have these experiences with these creatures when you hunted your whole life, you didn't have any. I think it's as simple as they watch us so closely and they understand our tendencies and our notions and the things that we do. And I think now that you're aware, you may not know, you know, maybe subconsciously you're doing things like looking for them, you know, and I think it upsets them to know that someone knows they're there. And so they react. That's just what I think. I could be 100% wrong, but I've just heard it so many times. You know, people say,
it makes sense.
People would say, I lived in this place, and this, I'm talking about 10 times I've heard this. I lived in this place for 20 years. I never saw anything until I saw it. Once I saw it, that was it. Rocks start hitting the house. This thing starts slapping the house at night, and all these, hearing these things, you know, and now I think subconsciously, even when they get out of their car, they're looking around now. They're doing something different. And I think they noticed that. I think they noticed that. And they're like, oh, the game is up. No sense in hiding now. Let's mess with this guy a little bit. Because they've got it all over us. They've got
you can never unsee it.
Us.
Once you lay eyes on one, you can never take that back. And everyone that I've seen is the ones that look back at me. It does something. Spiritually, it does something to you. And it's, I'm a grown man and I am afraid of the dark. And I've never been afraid. We used to go out.
I'm right there with you, man. Look, I'm 47. I will not go outside at night by myself. I will not do it.
No. And it's,
I live on the edge of the woods here. Thank you. Naughty Tube. Thank you. See, but you know, a lot of people watch on their TV, so they can't hit the like button. So I don't, you know, we don't stress. We appreciate the people that do hit the thumbs up. They can, you know, it is free to hit. I heard that you get 10 years of really good luck just for hitting the thumbs up button. Just saying, it's possible.
That's right. That's right. I'll second you on that. Yeah, absolutely.
But hey, Donnie, I appreciate you coming on here, man. I'm going to have you back on the very next late show that we do. We may do one here in a couple of days. I have the other channel, the storytelling channel is the Shutter. I'm going to do a live show on there the next couple of days. I know there's probably a lot of people here that don't do that, and a lot of people on the Shutter that never watch this. So it's going to be something completely different there. But I think after that, we'll do this again. I want you to come back.
Oh, absolutely. I've got when we get back together, I've got a fascinating encounter that was back during my high school, junior high days. And I think you're going to find that one. It's weird. It's not a Sasquatch. I don't know what they were, but there were 30 or 40 of us that witnessed these things. They were all around us one night.
Well, we'll
Panama
definitely
City Beach.
we'll definitely get into that then. And like I said, I appreciate you coming on. Y'all go check out Standing Goats Rescue on YouTube. You'll be able to see. I think Donnie just started this. You'll be able to see him and check out where he's investigating. Let me get this.
Yeah, there's no order to my YouTube. I'm learning as I go. So the video I posted today, I went to our property a few days ago and I got growled at. I had to stop recording to adjust my camera because the focus was going in and out automatically. And when I stopped it, something growled at me really close to me and it scared the life out of me. So I left. And I waited a few days and I came back today to try to get to the south end of the property. And I had some activity and I almost made it to the back until whatever it was took off moving really quick coming toward me. And that was more than I could handle and I left.
Well, I'm going to go to bed now and I'm going to listen to your channel on my way into the dreamland. So thanks.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for coming on. Thank you everyone. Thank you monitors and moderators for keeping the chat clean for us here. I appreciate everybody that's involved. We'll be back in a few days for another late show. Y'all have a good night and take care. Don't go nowhere, Donnie.
Yes, sir.